The small ship fell through the red sky like a burning star. Captain Jake Martinez gripped the controls as warning lights flashed all around him. His ship was dying and there was nothing he could do to save it. "Come on, hold together," he whispered to the machine. But the enemy weapons had done too much damage. The engines were failing, and the hull was cracked in 3 places. Jake had been on a simple patrol mission around the outer planets when the attack came. The aliens had ships everywhere, and they did not want humans in their space. His radio was dead, so he could not call for help. He was alone, millions of miles from Earth. The ground rushed up fast. Jake pulled back on the controls, trying to slow his fall. The ship hit hard, bouncing twice before sliding across the rocky ground. Metal screamed against stone. Then everything went quiet. Jake's head hurt and his left arm felt wrong. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. He checked his systems. The ship was completely dead. No power, no radio, no weapons. He was stuck on this alien world with only the clothes on his back and a small pistol. He crawled out of the wreck and looked around. The sky was red and 2 suns hung low on the horizon. Strange purple plants grew between the rocks. In the distance, he could see tall buildings that looked like they were made of crystal. Jake started walking toward the city. He had no other choice. Maybe he could find help or at least shelter. His arm hurt with each step, but he kept going. He had walked for about an hour when they found him. The aliens came out of nowhere. One moment Jake was alone, and the next, 6 tall figures surrounded him. They were beautiful in a deadly way. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were silver. They moved like dancers, but Jake could see the weapons in their hands. The leader stepped forward. She was taller than the others, and her silver hair was long and straight. She wore armor that looked like it was made of starlight. When she spoke, her voice was musical but cold. "You are human," she said in perfect English. "You should not be here." Jake raised his hand slowly. "My ship crashed. I'm not here to fight. All humans fight," the alien said. "It is what you do." She looked at his wounded arm and bloody face. "But you fight poorly." The other aliens laughed, but their leader did not smile. She studied Jake like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. "I am Princess Lyrakai of the Cathari Empire. You are my prisoner now." They took Jake to a building made of black stone. Inside, the walls glowed with soft blue light. They put him in a small room with no windows. A guard stood outside the door. Jake sat on the hard bed and tried to think of a way to escape, but his arm hurt too much to fight and he had nowhere to run. Princess Lyrakai came to see him the next day. She sat across from him at a small table and asked many questions. Where was he from? Why was he in Cathari space? How many human ships were coming? Jake answered some questions and ignored others. He told her about Earth, about humans, about their desire for peace. But he would not tell her about military secrets. "You are different from the other human we captured," the princess said. "What other human?" "General Morrison. He leads the rebels who fight against us. He is very angry and wants to kill all Cathari. But you," she studied his face, "you are not angry." "I don't want to kill anyone," Jake said. "I just want to go home." The princess seemed surprised by this. "All warriors want to kill their enemies. Maybe I'm not a warrior. Then what are you?" Before Jake could answer, loud sounds came from outside. Explosions, shouting, the sound of weapons firing. The princess jumped up, her hand going to the sword at her side. "The rebels," she whispered. The building shook as something big hit it. Dust fell from the ceiling. The princess spoke quickly into a small device on her wrist, but Jake could not understand her words. She was speaking in her own language now. A guard ran into the room. He spoke fast to the princess, pointing toward the door. Jake saw fear in both their faces. "We must go," the princess said to Jake. "The rebels have broken through our walls. They will kill everyone they find." She started to leave, then stopped and looked back at him. "If I free you, will you try to escape?" Jake looked at her honest face.
"Where would I go?"
"This is your world, not mine." The princess thought for a moment, then unlocked his chains. "Then help us fight. If the rebels win, they will kill you too. They hate all aliens." Jake rubbed his wrists where the chains had been. "I thought you were my enemy." "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," the princess said. "Is that not what humans say?" Jake almost smiled. "Something like that." They ran through the corridors of the building. Other Cathari soldiers joined them. Some looked at Jake with suspicion, but the princess spoke sharply to them and they said nothing. Outside, the battle was fierce. The rebels had surrounded the building. They wore dirty clothes and carried weapons that looked human-made. Jake could see that they were losing. The princess and her soldiers were brave, but they were outnumbered. There, Jake pointed to a group of rebels trying to set up a big gun. If they get that weapon working, it will blow a hole in your wall. The princess followed his gaze. We cannot reach them. Too many rebels between us and them. Jake looked around quickly. He saw a way, but it was dangerous. Give me a rifle. You are a prisoner. Do you want to live or not? The princess stared at him for a long moment, then handed him her extra weapon. Do not make me regret this. Jake took the rifle and ran toward the rebels. He moved fast, using the rubble and smoke for cover. The Cathari soldiers watched in amazement as this small human did what they could not do. Jake reached the big gun just as the rebels finished setting it up. He shot 2 of them before they saw him coming. The others turned to fight, but Jake was already moving. He had learned to fight in the Earth military, and these rebels were not soldiers. They were angry farmers and workers. He destroyed their weapon and fought his way back to the princess. She looked at him with new respect. Why did you help us? She asked as they caught their breath behind a wall. Jake wiped blood from a cut on his cheek. Because it was the right thing to do. The princess had never heard a warrior say that before. In her world, people fought for honor, for glory, for revenge. But this human fought simply because it was right. The battle ended when more Cathari soldiers arrived. The rebels ran away, leaving their dead behind. Jake sat on a broken wall and watched the alien sunset. His arm still hurt, but he felt something else now. He felt like maybe he belonged here, at least for a while. The princess sat beside him. You are an interesting prisoner, Jake Martinez. You're an interesting captor, Princess Lyrakai. They sat in comfortable silence as the red sky turned purple. Neither of them knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change both their worlds forever. The queen arrived 3 days after the battle. Jake heard her ships before he saw them. They made a sound like thunder that never stopped. When he looked out the small window of his new room, he saw 5 huge vessels landing in the courtyard. They were beautiful and terrible, like metal flowers with sharp petals. Queen Vexandra stepped out of the largest ship, and Jake understood immediately why her people feared and loved her. She was tall even for a Cathari, with skin like silver and eyes like winter storms. Her armor was white and gold, and it seemed to glow in the red sunlight. When she walked, everyone around her bowed low. Princess Lyrakai met her mother at the landing pad. Jake watched from his window as they talked. He could not hear their words, but he could see their body language. The queen was angry. Her daughter was trying to explain something. Other officers pointed toward the building where Jake was being held. An hour later, Princess Lyrakai came to his room. She looked worried. My mother wants to see you, she said. That doesn't sound good. It is not. She is very angry that I freed you during the battle. She thinks you might be a spy. Jake stood up and stretched. His arm was feeling better, but his ribs still hurt from the fight. What do you think? The princess looked at him carefully. I think you are either the most honest person I have ever met or the best liar. I hope it's the first one. They walked through the corridors of the building. Jake noticed that there were more guards now, and they all watched him with suspicious eyes. The queen had brought her own soldiers, and they did not trust humans. The throne room was huge and cold. The walls were covered with weapons from 1,000 battles. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one telling the story of a victory. At the far end of the room, Queen Vexandra sat on a chair made of black metal and white stone. Jake walked forward until he was standing in the center of the room. The queen stared down at him for a long time without speaking. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke. You are smaller than I expected. Most people say that. Yet my daughter tells me you fought like a giant. She says you saved her life and the lives of many of my soldiers. I did what anyone would do. The queen laughed, but it was not a happy sound. No, human. Most people would have run away or hidden. But you chose to fight for people who were your enemies just hours before. Why? Jake thought about his answer carefully. He knew that his life might depend on what he said next. Because they were people, he said finally, and people shouldn't die if I can help stop it. The queen leaned forward in her chair. Even enemy people? Especially enemy people. It's easy to save your friends. It takes courage to save your enemies. Queen Vexandra was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked down the steps until she was standing right in front of Jake. She was much taller than him, and he had to look up to meet her eyes. "I have heard strange stories about humans," she said. "They say you are weak but somehow dangerous. They say you break easily but never give up. I want to see if these stories are true." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "I challenge you to combat. If you win, you are free to go. If you lose, you die. Get mother, no!" Princess Lyrakai stepped forward. "He is still injured from the battle. This is not fair. Life is not fair, daughter. War is not fair. If this human is as special as you claim, he will find a way to survive." The queen clapped her hands twice. A door opened at the side of the room, and the largest Cathari Jake had ever seen walked in. He was almost 8 feet tall, with muscles like iron cables. Scars covered his arms and chest. When he moved, Jake could hear his joints pop and crack. "This is Commander Thekros," the queen said. "He has never lost a fight. He has killed rebels, criminals, and wild beasts with his bare hands. He will be your opponent." Commander Thekros looked down at Jake and smiled. His teeth were sharp and white. "This will be quick," he said in a voice like grinding stone. "What weapons do I get?" Jake asked. "The same as him," the queen replied. "Your hands, your feet, and your mind." They moved to the courtyard outside. Word spread quickly through the city that the queen was holding a combat trial. Hundreds of Cathari gathered to watch. They filled the balconies and rooftops around the courtyard. Jake had never felt so alone. Princess Lyrakai found him before the fight began. "I am sorry," she said. "I tried to change her mind, but she will not listen." "It's not your fault," Jake said. He was trying to stretch his sore muscles. "Maybe this is for the best. At least now I'll know where I stand. Thekros is very strong and very fast. He has been fighting for 30 years. Then I guess I'll have to be smarter." The princess touched his shoulder gently. "Be careful, Jake Martinez. I would hate to lose the first honest warrior I have ever met." The fight began when the queen dropped a white cloth. Thekros came at Jake like a charging bull. His first punch would have taken Jake's head off, but Jake was not there anymore. He had rolled to the side and was already moving again. Thekros was strong and fast, but he was also huge. Jake was smaller and could change direction quickly. For the first few minutes, he just ran and dodged while Thekros tried to catch him. The crowd began to laugh. They thought the human was a coward, but Jake was not running from fear. He was learning. He watched how Thekros moved, how he attacked, how he defended. Every warrior had patterns, and Jake was looking for them. When Thekros threw a big overhead punch, Jake ducked and hit him hard in the ribs. The crowd gasped. No one had ever hurt the commander before. Thekros roared and swung again, but Jake was already gone. The fight went on for 20 minutes. Jake was getting tired, but so was Thekros. The big warrior was not used to opponents who would not stand and trade blows with him. He was getting frustrated and sloppy. Jake waited for his chance. When Thekros charged again, Jake stepped to the side and stuck out his foot. The commander tripped and fell hard on the stone ground. Before he could get up, Jake was on his back with his arm around Thekros' throat. "Yield," Jake whispered in his ear. Thekros struggled, but Jake's hold was perfect. The commander was running out of air. His face was turning purple. The crowd was completely silent. "Yield," Jake said again. Thekros tapped Jake's arm 3 times. In any fighting system, this meant surrender. Jake let go immediately and rolled away. The crowd exploded in noise. Some cheered, some booed, some just stared in shock. No one had ever seen Commander Thekros lose a fight, but Jake was not finished. Instead of celebrating his victory, he walked over to where Thekros was sitting on the ground, gasping for air. Jake held out his hand. "Good fight," he said. The Kyros looked at the offered hand in confusion. In Cathari culture, the winner killed the loser. That was the law. That was the way it had always been. "You are supposed to kill me," Thekros said. "Why would I do that? You fought with honor. You have nothing to be ashamed of, but I lost. I am weak." Jake pulled Thekros to his feet. "Losing one fight doesn't make you weak. It makes you experienced. Now you know something new." The crowd was murmuring now. They did not understand what they were seeing. Queen Vexandra was staring at Jake with an expression he could not read. "Kill him," someone shouted from the crowd. "Finish the fight!" Jake turned toward the voice. "The fight is finished. I won, he lost, we both learned something. No one needs to die." More voices joined in, demanding blood. The crowd was getting angry. They wanted to see death. They had come for entertainment, and Jake was ruining their show. Queen Vexandra raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. She walked down into the courtyard until she was standing between Jake and Thekros. "Explain yourself, human," she said. "Why do you spare his life?" "Because taking it would accomplish nothing," Jake replied. "He's not my enemy anymore. We just had a disagreement about who was stronger. Now we know. There's no reason for him to die. He would have killed you if he had won. Maybe, but that's his choice, not mine. I can only control what I do." The Queen studied Jake's face. "You are either very wise or very foolish. I've been called both." Princess Lyrakai was watching this exchange with wide eyes. She had never seen anyone refuse to kill a defeated enemy. In her world, mercy was seen as weakness. But looking at Jake now, standing calm and confident in front of hundreds of angry aliens, she thought he looked very strong indeed. Queen Vexandra made her decision. "You have won your freedom, human. But I offer you something else. Stay here as my guest. Teach my soldiers what you know about fighting and strategy. In return, I will give you a ship to go home when you are ready." Jake looked around the courtyard, at the angry faces in the crowd, at Princess Lyrakai's hopeful expression, at Commander Thekros, who was still staring at him in wonder. "I'll stay for a while," he said, "but I have one condition. Name it. No more fights to the death. If you want me to teach your people, we do it my way. We learn from each other without killing each other." The Queen smiled for the first time since Jake had met her. "You are a very strange warrior, Jake Martinez." "So I've been told." As they walked back into the building, Princess Lyrakai fell into step beside Jake. "That was very brave," she said quietly. "Or very stupid." "I do not think you are stupid." "Different, yes, but not stupid," she paused. "You have given me much to think about." Jake looked at her thoughtful face. "Like what?" "Like maybe there are different ways to be strong." That night, as Jake... The first bombs fell at dawn. Jake woke up to the sound of explosions and breaking glass. His room shook as something big hit the building next door. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside, and he could hear alarms wailing across the city. He dressed quickly and ran toward the command center. Cathari soldiers were running everywhere, shouting orders and carrying weapons. Princess Lyrakai met him at the door to the war room. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "It's the rebels," she said. "They're attacking with everything they have. Ships, ground forces, weapons we've never seen before." Inside the command center, Queen Vexandra stood over a large table covered with maps and glowing displays. Her officers surrounded her, all talking at once. The news was bad and getting worse. "They have broken through the north wall," one officer reported. "The 4th Battalion is falling back." "The sky is full of their ships," said another. "Our fighters cannot get close. They have some kind of new weapon that destroys our aircraft before they can attack." Queen Vexandra's face was like stone, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "How many ships do they have?" "At least 50, Your Majesty. Maybe more. They came from the eastern desert where we thought nothing could survive." Jake moved closer to the table and studied the displays. The rebels had the city surrounded. Their forces were larger than anything the Cathari had faced before. But something about their attack pattern bothered him. "This isn't random," he said quietly. The Queen looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Look at how they're positioned. They're not just trying to destroy the city. They're trying to capture it intact. See how they're avoiding the water treatment plant and the power stations? They want to rule this place, not just conquer it." Princess Lyrakai studied the map. "He's right. If they just wanted to kill us all, they would have bombed the whole city from space." "Which means they think they can win," Jake continued. "And they think they can control your people afterward. That tells us something about their leader." "Morrison," the Queen said, her voice full of hate. "The human who leads them." Jake had heard the name before, but this was the first time he had seen the Queen's reaction to it. "Tell me about him." "He arrived on our world 5 years ago," Princess Lyrakai explained. "His ship was damaged like yours, but instead of seeking help, he found the rebels and joined them. He taught them new ways to fight, made them stronger. He is clever and cruel," the Queen added. "He knows our weaknesses because he has studied us. And he has weapons from your world that we do not understand." Another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered. An officer ran into the room with blood on his uniform. "Your Majesty, the rebels have taken the East District. They're using some kind of energy weapon that melts our armor. Our soldiers cannot get close to them." Queen Vexandra closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, Jake saw something he had never expected to see. Fear. "We cannot win this battle," she said quietly. "Not with what we have." The room fell silent. No one had ever heard the Queen admit defeat before. Jake could see the shock on their faces, the growing panic. "Maybe you don't have to win," Jake said. Everyone turned to look at him. The Queen's eyes were dangerous. "Explain yourself, human. You said Morrison knows your weaknesses. But does he know your strengths? Does he understand why people follow you?" "They follow me because I am strong." "No," Jake said firmly. "They follow you because you protect them." "There's a difference." The Queen stepped closer to him. Her hand moved to her sword. "You think I am weak? I think you're focused on the wrong enemy. Morrison isn't your real problem. The real problem is why people joined the rebels in the first place. What made them so angry that they would rather fight you than live under your rule?" Princess Lyrakai gasped. No one spoke to the Queen this way. No one questioned her authority. But Jake continued before anyone could stop him. "If you just defeat Morrison's army, the rebels will find another leader. If you kill every rebel, your people will fear you instead of respect you. But if you fix the problems that created the rebellion, you think I should surrender?" The Queen asked, her voice deadly quiet. "I think you should lead." Another explosion, closer this time. The building groaned and cracks appeared in the walls. Time was running out. "The rebels are 3 blocks away," the bloody officer reported. "We have maybe an hour before they reach the palace." Queen Vexiandra stared at Jake for a long moment. Around them, her officers waited for orders. The fate of the Empire hung in the balance. "What do you suggest?" she asked finally. "Let me go to them." "That's suicide," Princess Lyrakai said immediately. "Morrison will kill you." "Maybe, but I'm human like him. He might listen to me before he kills me, and I might learn something useful." "What could you possibly learn that would help us?" Jake pointed to the display showing the rebel positions. "Look at their formation. It's almost perfect. Too perfect. Morrison has been planning this attack for months, maybe years. He knows exactly where to hit you and when. But perfect plans have perfect weaknesses." The Queen considered this. "Even if you could reach Morrison, what would you say to him?" "I'd ask him what he really wants. Is he trying to save these people, or is he just trying to destroy you? Because there's a difference, and that difference might be the key to stopping this war." "And if he simply kills you?" Jake shrugged. "Then you're no worse off than you are now. But if I can get him talking, I might learn something that saves your city." Princess Lyrakai grabbed his arm. "Jake, this is madness. You barely survived our prison. How do you expect to survive a rebel camp?" "I don't know if I will. But I know that doing nothing means everyone dies. At least this way, someone might live." The Queen walked to the window and looked out at her burning city. Smoke rose from a dozen fires. In the distance, she could see rebel ships circling like metal vultures. "If I allow this," she said without turning around, "you will be alone. We cannot help you if things go wrong." "I understand. And if you are captured, we will deny any knowledge of your mission. You will be on your own." "I understand that too." The Queen turned back to face him.
"Why would you do this for us?"
"We are not your people. This is not your war." Jake thought about his answer carefully. Maybe that's exactly why I should do it. I don't hate Morrison and I don't hate the rebels. I'm not angry about old wounds or past battles. Maybe that's what this situation needs, someone who can see clearly. Or maybe you will just get yourself killed for nothing. Maybe. But maybe not. Princess Lyrakai stepped between them. "Mother, if Jake is willing to risk his life for us, shouldn't we be willing to risk our pride for him?" "What do you mean?" "He's asking us to trust him. But he's also asking us to trust that there might be a better way than just fighting. What if he's right? What if we could end this war without destroying half our people?" The Queen looked at her daughter with surprise. "You sound like him now. Maybe that's not a bad thing." Another explosion, very close. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on dimmer than before. The palace guards were falling back to the inner walls. "Decide now," Jake said. "In 10 minutes it will be too late." Queen Vexandra made her choice. "Very well. But if you betray us, if this is some human trick, if I betray you, kill me. But give me a chance first." The Queen nodded to her officers. "Prepare a small ship. Something fast that can slip past their patrols." "Your Majesty," one of the officers protested. "This is foolish. We should be preparing our defenses, not sending away our only military advisor." "Our military advisor just told us that military solutions won't work," the Queen replied. "Perhaps it's time to try something else." 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the palace hangar next to a small, fast scout ship. Princess Lyrakai handed him a communication device and a translator unit. "Stay in contact if you can," she said. "And remember, if Morrison is as dangerous as we think, he won't hesitate to kill you." "I'll be careful." "No, you won't. Being careful is not what makes you special. Just try to come back alive." Jake climbed into the ship and started the engines. The controls were different from human ships, but not so different that he couldn't figure them out. As he lifted off, he could see the full extent of the battle below. The rebels had the city almost completely surrounded. Their ships filled the sky, and their ground forces were advancing steadily toward the palace. It looked hopeless for the Cathari, but as Jake flew toward the rebel camp, he noticed something interesting. The rebel forces were spread thin. They had quantity, but they were sacrificing quality for coverage. Morrison was trying to end the war quickly, before the Cathari could organize a proper defense. That meant he was either very confident or very desperate. Jake was betting on desperate. The rebel camp was in the hills east of the city. Jake set his ship down in a clearing about a mile away and walked the rest of the distance. He kept his hands visible and made no sudden movements. He wanted to be captured, not shot. The rebels found him exactly where he expected them to. They were young, angry, and armed with weapons that looked human-made. When they saw him, their eyes filled with suspicion. "I want to talk to Morrison," Jake said in their language, using the translator device. The rebels looked at each other uncertainly. They had obviously not expected a human to just walk into their camp and ask for their... Inside the tent, Morrison poured himself a drink from a bottle that looked human-made. The tent was filled with maps, computers, and weapons that definitely did not belong on this alien world. Jake counted at least 6 different types of Earth military equipment, some of it classified technology that should not exist outside of government labs. "Drink?" Morrison offered, holding up the bottle. "No, thank you." "Smart man. This stuff could kill a horse." Morrison sat down in a chair made of metal and leather. "So Martinez, tell me your story. How did you end up playing friends with the aliens who killed your crew?" "My crew wasn't killed. I was alone when I crashed." "Ah, a scout mission. Looking for new worlds for humanity to colonize, I suppose. How does it feel to know you found one that's already occupied?" Jake studied Morrison's face. The man looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and dangerous. There was intelligence there, but also something broken. "The Cathari didn't ask to meet humans," Jake said carefully. "We came into their space uninvited." Morrison laughed and took a long drink. "Uninvited. I like that. Very polite. Tell me, Martinez, what did they do when they found you? Did they welcome you with open arms? Did they offer you food and shelter and medical care?" "They captured me." "Of course they did. And then what, torture? Interrogation? Did they threaten to kill you if you didn't cooperate?" Jake thought about Princess Lyrakai and her honest questions, about Queen Vexandra's test of combat, about the way the Cathari soldiers had accepted him after he proved himself. "They tested me," he said finally. "When I proved I wasn't a threat, they treated me fairly." Morrison's smile was cold and empty. "Fairly? How wonderfully naive you are, Martinez. Do you know what they did to me when I crashed here 5 years ago? Tell me." Morrison stood up and walked to a table covered with photographs. He picked up one and handed it to Jake. It showed a human ship burned and twisted. Bodies lay scattered around it. "That was my crew," Morrison said. 12 good people. Scientists, explorers, dreamers. The Cathari found us before we could repair our ship. They killed everyone except me." Jake looked at the photograph more carefully. Something about it bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what. "Why did they spare you?" "Because I was useful. I had knowledge they wanted. Military tactics, technology, information about Earth, so they kept me alive and let me watch while they burned my friends." "I'm sorry," Jake said. And he meant it. "That's terrible." "Yes, it is. And do you know what the worst part was? They enjoyed it. They laughed while my people died. They made jokes about how weak humans were, how easily we broke." Jake handed the photograph back. "But you escaped. Eventually. And when I did, I found others who had suffered under Cathari rule. Farmers whose land had been taken. Workers forced into slavery. Families torn apart by their wars. I gave them hope, Martinez. I gave them the tools to fight back." Morrison walked to another table and picked up a weapon that looked like a cross between a rifle and a flamethrower. "This is human technology modified for local conditions. One shot can melt through their strongest armor. I've taught the rebels how to make them, how to use them. And now you're winning. Now we're liberating this world from tyrants. Morrison's voice was getting louder, more passionate. When we're done here, there will be no more Cathari Empire. No more suffering under their rule. Peace at last. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, no more empire? Morrison's smile was terrible to see. I mean exactly what I said. Total victory, Martinez. Complete elimination of the enemy. It's the only way to ensure they never hurt anyone again. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about justice. An eye for an eye, as they say. They killed my people, so I'll kill theirs. All of them. Jake stood up slowly. Morrison, listen to yourself. You're talking about murdering millions of innocent people. Innocent? Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. Were the children in my crew innocent when the Cathari burned them alive? Was my navigator innocent when they made her watch her husband die before they killed her too? That doesn't make genocide right? Morrison laughed, and it was the sound of madness barely held in check. Right doesn't matter anymore, Martinez. Only results matter. Only victory matters. Jake looked around the tent at all the human technology, at the maps showing rebel positions, at Morrison's twisted face. He was beginning to understand something terrible. You didn't escape, did you? Jake said quietly. They let you go. Morrison's smile faltered for just a moment. What? The Cathari? They didn't capture you and torture you and kill your crew. They found your ship after it crashed and offered to help. But you attacked them first. You don't know what you're talking about. The photograph you showed me. The bodies around your ship. They're wearing Cathari armor, not human clothes. Those are the people who came to rescue you. Morrison's hand moved to the weapon on his belt. You're wrong, am I? 5 years ago, the Cathari Empire was at peace. No major wars, no rebellions. Then you arrived and suddenly there are rebels everywhere, armed with human weapons fighting a war they can't possibly win without outside help. Shut up. You created this rebellion, Morrison. You didn't join it, you built it. You found angry people and made them into an army. You gave them weapons and taught them to hate, and now you're using them to destroy an entire species because you can't admit that you started a war for no reason. Morrison drew his weapon and pointed it at Jake. I said shut up. Jake didn't move. How many of your own rebels have you killed when they questioned your orders? How many times have you had to silence people who wondered why you wanted to kill everyone, instead of just winning the war? They don't understand the big picture. No, Morrison. You don't understand it. You've been fighting for so long that you've forgotten why you started. Now you just fight because it's all you know how to do. Morrison's finger tightened on the trigger. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill you right now. Because killing me won't change the truth. Your rebellion is built on lies and you know it. That's why you need to destroy everything. If anyone survives to tell the real story, they'll expose you for what you really are. And what am I? A madman with a gun, Morrison fired. But Jake was already moving. The energy blast missed him by inches and burned a hole through the tent wall. Jake rolled across the table and tackled Morrison around the waist. They crashed to the ground, fighting for control of the weapon. Morrison was older and more experienced, but Jake was desperate. He knew that if Morrison won this fight, millions of people would die. Morrison kneed Jake in the stomach and broke free. He raised the weapon again, but Jake grabbed a metal tool from the table and threw it. The tool hit Morrison in the wrist and the weapon went flying. They fought hand to hand across the tent, destroying equipment and knocking over furniture. Morrison was skilled, but he was also angry and careless. Jake used his opponent's rage against him, staying calm and looking for opportunities. The fight ended when Morrison pulled a knife and lunged at Jake's throat. Jake caught his wrist and twisted. The knife clattered away and Morrison stumbled backward. He hit the computer console and accidentally activated something. Alarms started blaring throughout the camp. Red lights flashed on screens all around the tent. Morrison looked at the displays and started laughing. Too late, hero, he gasped. You want to save everyone? Let's see you save them from this. Jake looked at the screens and felt his blood turn to ice. Morrison had activated some kind of weapon system. The display showed a countdown timer. 15 minutes and falling. What is that? A little gift from Earth's military. An orbital bombardment satellite I've been saving for special occasions. In 15 minutes, it will drop enough firepower to turn the capital city into a crater. Everyone dies, Martinez. Rebels, Cathari, even you and me. You're insane. Your own people are in that city. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. Jake lunged for the control console, but Morrison tackled him from behind. They fought again, more desperately this time. Jake managed to break free and reach the controls, but the system was locked. He needed Morrison's access codes. Stop it, Jake shouted.
Cancel the strike!
Never. Morrison wiped blood from his mouth and smiled. This is how wars end, Martinez. Not with treaties or negotiations, but with fire and ash. Total victory or total defeat. Jake looked at the countdown. 12 minutes. Even if he could get to his ship, he couldn't reach the city in time to warn everyone. But maybe he could do something else. He grabbed the communication equipment and started transmitting on all frequencies. This is Jake Martinez calling anyone who can hear me. Morrison has activated an orbital weapon. Impact in 12 minutes. Everyone needs to evacuate the capital immediately. Get underground, get to the shelters, get as far away as you can. Morrison tried to stop him, but Jake held him off while continuing to broadcast. Princess Lyrakai, if you can hear this, get your mother and get out. Take everyone you can. You have 12 minutes, 11 minutes, Morrison corrected, still smiling, and nowhere to run. The blast radius will cover the entire city. Jake looked at the tactical display. Morrison was right. The weapon was designed to destroy military bases and heavily fortified positions. Against a city, it would be devastating, but there was something else on the display. Underground. The weapon hit the capital city like the hammer of an angry god. The sound was beyond noise, beyond hearing. It was something you felt in your bones, in your soul. The ground shook for miles around and a pillar of light rose into the red sky. But when the light faded and the dust settled, the city was still there. Jake opened his eyes and found himself lying on the floor of Morrison's tent. His ears were ringing and his whole body ached, but he was alive. Morrison lay a few feet away, unconscious but breathing. The tent had collapsed around them, but the hill had protected them from the worst of the blast. Jake crawled outside and looked toward the capital. A crater marked where the center of the city had been, but the outer districts remained. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires, but people were moving in the streets. His plan had worked. Not perfectly, but well enough. His communicator crackled to life. Jake, are you there? It was Princess Lyrakai's voice, full of fear and hope. I'm here, he answered, his voice rough from dust and smoke. Thank the ancestors. We thought... When the weapon hit... Are you hurt? I'm okay. What about your people? Did they make it to the tunnels? Most of them. The mining tunnels saved thousands of lives. Your warning gave us just enough time. Her voice broke a little. You could have escaped. You could have saved yourself. Why did you stay? Jake looked around at the destroyed rebel camp. Many of the rebels had survived too, hidden in caves and shelters throughout the hills. They were starting to emerge now, looking shocked and confused. Because running away doesn't solve problems, Jake said. It just leaves them for someone else to handle. Over the next few hours, something amazing happened. Instead of resuming their battle, both sides stopped fighting. The rebels, seeing their leader's ultimate weapon used against the city they claimed to be liberating, began to question everything Morrison had taught them. The Cathari, seeing that a human had risked his life to save their people, began to wonder if all humans were really their enemies. Jake spent the day moving between the two groups, talking to soldiers and civilians, rebels and loyalists. He carried messages back and forth, negotiated temporary truces, and helped organize rescue efforts for people trapped in the damaged city. By evening, something that had never happened in the history of the war occurred. Rebels and Cathari soldiers worked side by side to dig survivors out of the rubble. Princess Lyrakai found Jake as the alien suns were setting. He was sitting on a piece of broken wall watching humans and Cathari share food and medical supplies. You did this, she said quietly. We all did this. I just helped people remember that they're people. My mother wants to see you. The princess paused. She was caught in the blast. She's badly hurt. Jake felt his heart sink. Queen Vexandra had been many things. Proud, fierce, sometimes cruel. But she had also been a leader who genuinely cared for her people. Take me to her. The medical center was in chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed between beds filled with blast victims. The queen lay in a private room, her silver skin pale and her breathing shallow. When she saw Jake, she tried to sit up. Stay down, Jake said gently. Save your strength. I don't have much strength left to save, the queen replied with a weak smile. But I have enough for what needs to be said. Princess Lyrakai stood beside her mother's bed, tears in her silver eyes. The doctors say there's nothing they can do. The blast damaged too much. Queen Vexandra reached out and took Jake's hand in her cold fingers. I owe you an apology, human. When you first came to my world, I saw you as an enemy, then as a curiosity, then as a useful tool. I was wrong about all of it. Your Majesty, no, let me finish. I have ruled through fear and strength for most of my life. I thought that was what leadership meant. But you have shown me something different. You have shown me that true strength comes from sacrifice. True leadership comes from service. She looked at her daughter, then back at Jake. I am dying, and my empire is broken. But perhaps something better can be built from the pieces. Over the next 3 days, Jake watched the queen fade away slowly. But even as her body failed, her mind remained sharp. She used her final hours to do something no Cathari ruler had ever done before. She listened. She listened to rebels explain why they had joined the uprising. She listened to her own soldiers describe their doubts about the war. She listened to civilians talk about their hopes for the future. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand how her empire had become something that needed to be rebelled against. On the 3rd day, she called Jake and her daughter to her bedside for the last time. I have made my decision, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lyrakai, you will be queen after I am gone. But you will not rule the same empire I did. You will build something new, something better. Mother, I don't know if I'm ready. You are ready because you understand what I took too long to learn. Power exists to serve people, not the other way around. The queen turned her fading gaze to Jake. And you, human, will help her. I'm honored, Your Majesty, but I'm not one of your people. I can't. Queen Vexandra raised her hand weakly, cutting him off. She looked at Princess Lyrakai, and her voice grew stronger for a moment. My daughter, she said clearly. I want you to look at this human. Look at what he has done, what he has sacrificed, what he has built. Look at how he chose to save his enemies instead of destroying them. Princess Lyrakai nodded, tears streaming down her face. The queen pointed a trembling finger at Jake. He is not our blood, but he is our heart. He is not our birth, but he is our choice. Her voice filled with the authority she had carried for decades. My warrior. Those were Queen Vexandra's last words. She died peacefully, her hand in her daughter's, her eyes on the human who had changed everything. The funeral was unlike anything in Kithari history. Not only did thousands of loyal citizens attend, but rebels came too. Former enemies stood side by side to mourn a queen who had in her final days become something more than a ruler. She had become a bridge. Princess Lyrakai was crowned queen the next day, but her first act was not to issue orders or make proclamations. Instead, she called for a gathering of all the people, rebels and loyalists, soldiers and civilians, humans and Cathari. The meeting was held in the great square before the palace, the same place where Jake had fought Commander Thekros weeks earlier. But now, instead of a crowd calling for blood, there was a community ready to listen. Queen Lyrakai stood before them all, young and uncertain, but determined. Jake stood beside her, not as a prisoner or a guest, but as something new, an advisor, a friend, a symbol of what could be possible when people chose cooperation over conquest. My mother ruled through strength, the new queen said. I choose to lead through service. My mother conquered enemies. I choose to make friends. My mother built an empire. I choose to build a community. She turned to Jake. This human has shown us a different way, not the way of the weak or the way of the strong, but the way of the wise. He will help us find that path. The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then Commander Thekros, the warrior Jake had defeated and spared, stepped forward. If the Queen's warrior will teach us, he said loudly, then I will learn. One by one, others joined him. Rebels laid down their weapons. Soldiers removed their helmets. Citizens reached out to former enemies. It was not instant peace. There was still too much pain, too much history for that. But it was the beginning of healing. Over the following months, Jake worked with Queen Lyrakai to rebuild not just the city, but the entire structure of Cathari society. They established councils where all voices could be heard. They created laws that protected the weak as well as the strong. They opened channels of communication between different groups that had been enemies for generations. Morrison, when he finally woke up from his injuries, was a broken man. The reality of what his weapon had done, combined with seeing his former rebels working alongside their former enemies, shattered whatever was left of his sanity. He spent his days in a comfortable room in the palace, cared for but no longer dangerous, mumbling about wars that existed only in his mind. Jake often visited him, trying to understand how a human could fall so far. In Morrison, he saw what he himself might have become if he had chosen anger over hope, revenge over forgiveness. It was a sobering reminder of how thin the line was between salvation and damnation. The real test came 6 months later, when the first Earthships arrived in response to Jake's original distress signal. The human fleet expected to find a dead scout and hostile aliens. Instead, they found a thriving partnership between species. Admiral Lisa Carter, the fleet commander, met with Queen Lyrakai and Jake in the same throne room where Jake had first been brought as a prisoner. But now the room was different. The weapons on the walls had been replaced with art from both human and Cathari cultures. The banners told stories of cooperation instead of conquest. "Captain Martinez," the admiral said, "your reports are unusual. You claim these aliens are not hostile." "They're not aliens to me anymore," Jake replied. "They're neighbors, and you," the admiral turned to Queen Lyrakai. "You're willing to negotiate with humanity, even after what Morrison's rebellion cost you?" "Morrison does not represent humanity any more than my mother's empire represented the best of the Cathari," the Queen answered. "Jake Martinez has